Here's something that might sting a little. The reason your tomatoes are cracking, your peppers are rotting on the bottom, and your seedlings keep keeling over probably isn't bad luck. And it's almost certainly not your brown thumb. It's advice. Specifically, it's the well-meaning gardening advice that gets passed down from grandparents, repeated in Facebook groups, and recycled across the internet until everyone just assumes it's true. The tricky part is that a lot of it sounds right. It feels like wisdom. But when scientists and university extension offices actually put these tips to the test, a surprising number of them fall apart. And some of them are actively working against you every single season. So today we're busting 7 of the most common gardening myths that beginners fall for. These aren't harmless little superstitions. Each one can quietly shrink your harvest, weaken your plants, or send you out to the garden doing chores that do nothing at all. Let's clear the weeds and get into it. Myth number 1. Watering in the midday sun will scorch your leaves. This is probably the most repeated rule in all of gardening. You've heard it. Never water in the heat of the day, because the water droplets sitting on the leaves act like tiny magnifying glasses, focusing the sun's rays and burning little holes right through the foliage. It's a great story. It even comes with a memory most of us share, frying a leaf or an unlucky ant with a magnifying glass as a kid. So it feels obvious. Water plus sunlight equals scorched plant. Case closed, right? Not so fast. Researchers at Eötvös University in Hungary actually ran the experiment using both computer modeling and real leaves and published their findings in the journal New Phytologist. What they found was that water droplets sitting on smooth, hairless leaves, which is most of your garden, simply can't cause sunburn. The droplet sits too close to the leaf surface to focus light into a hot point. To burn the leaf, the lens would need to be held at a precise height above it, the way you have to hold a magnifying glass just right. A droplet flattened against a leaf does not do that. Think about it logically for a second. Plants get rained on at high noon all summer long. If midday water droplets really torched leaves, every garden in America would be crispy by the 4th of July. Pond plants would be impossible. It just does not happen. Now, there is one tiny asterisk. The same researchers found that certain plants covered in fine wax hairs like floating ferns can hold a droplet up off the surface just enough to focus light and cause a little damage. But that is a narrow exception, not your tomatoes, beans, or lettuce. So why does the don't water at noon advice still float around? Because there is a real reason to avoid midday watering. It is just the wrong reason. When you water in the blazing heat, a big chunk of that water evaporates before it ever soaks down to the roots. You are wasting water, not burning plants. The fix is simple. Water early in the morning so plants drink up before the heat hits, and the leaves have all day to dry off, which keeps fungal diseases at bay. But if your plants are wilting and gasping at 2 in the afternoon, go ahead and water them. You will not hurt them. Myth number 2, the more you water, the healthier your plants. It feels like love, doesn't it? You walk out every evening, give every plant a generous drink, and feel like a responsible gardener. More water means happier plants. What could possibly go wrong? Quite a lot, actually. Overwatering kills far more garden plants than underwatering ever does, and it's the number 1 mistake beginners make. Here's the part nobody tells you. Roots don't just need water, they need air. There are pockets of oxygen in healthy soil, and roots breathe through them. When you keep the soil constantly soggy, you drown those air pockets. The roots can't get oxygen, they start to suffocate and rot, and a rotting root system can't take up water or nutrients. The cruel irony is that an overwatered plant often looks exactly like a thirsty one, droopy, yellow, sad, so the panicked beginner waters it more and finishes the job. There's a second problem with the daily sprinkle habit. When you give plants a light splash every day, the water only wets the top inch of soil. The roots, being smart, stay shallow to chase that easy water near the surface. You end up with a shallow root system that has zero drought tolerance. So the moment you skip a day or a heat wave rolls in, the plant crashes. The better approach is to water deeply, but less often. A long, slow soak that reaches well down into the soil encourages roots to grow deep, where moisture lingers and where the plant is far more resilient. Before you reach for the hose, stick your finger a couple of inches into the soil. If it's still damp down there, walk away. If it's dry, water thoroughly. Let the plant's actual needs, not your daily routine, decide. Your harvest and your water bill will thank you. Myth number 3. Put gravel in the bottom of pots to improve drainage. This one is practically gospel for container gardening. Toss a layer of rocks, broken pottery, or gravel in the bottom of the pot before you add soil, and the water will drain right through, keeping your plant's roots from sitting in a swamp. Generations of gardeners have done it. It seems almost too logical to be wrong, but it is wrong, and it does the opposite of what you want. The culprit is something called a perched water table. Water does not actually like to move from a fine material like potting soil into a coarse material like gravel. Because of capillary action, the same force that lets a paper towel wick up a spill, water clings to the small spaces between soil particles and refuses to drop into the big open gaps in the gravel until the soil directly above it is completely saturated. So instead of a dry layer of rocks pulling water away, you create a zone of waterlogged soil sitting right on top of that gravel. By adding rocks, you have actually raised that soggy zone higher in the pot, closer to your plant's roots. You wanted to protect the roots from sitting in water, and you have done the exact opposite. On top of that, you have stolen valuable soil volume that your roots could have used to grow and feed. It is worth being honest here. A few recent experiments suggest that under very specific controlled conditions, certain coarse layers can help a little. But the overwhelming guidance from horticulture experts and university extension programs for normal home container gardening is the same. Skip the rocks. What actually works? First, make sure your pot has drainage holes. That is non-negotiable. Second, fill the whole container with a good light potting mix. If you want better drainage, do not add a rock layer. Mix something like perlite throughout the entire pot so water can move freely everywhere. The only thing that belongs at the bottom of your pot is more potting soil. Myth number 4. Bury eggshells to prevent blossom end rot. If you grow tomatoes, you'll eventually run into it, that ugly, sunken, leathery black patch on the bottom of the fruit. It's called blossom end rot, and it's heartbreaking after weeks of care, so you hop online and everyone gives you the same fix. Blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency. Eggshells are full of calcium, so crush up some shells and bury them in the planting hole. Problem solved. Except it usually isn't. This myth is what I'd call half-true, which is exactly why it is so sticky. Yes, blossom end rot is caused by a calcium issue, and yes, eggshells are almost pure calcium carbonate, but here is where it falls apart, and university extension offices across the country agree on this. Blossom end rot is rarely caused by a lack of calcium in the soil. Most garden soil already has plenty. The real problem is that the plant cannot move the calcium up into the developing fruit, and that breakdown is almost always caused by inconsistent watering. Calcium travels through the plant dissolved in water. When the soil swings from bone dry to soaking wet and back again, that delivery system stalls, and the fruit at the very end of the line gets shorted. So even in a calcium-rich soil, you will still get blossom end rot if your watering is erratic. Dumping in eggshells does not fix the actual problem. There is a second issue. Eggshells decompose incredibly slowly. Anyone who has tossed them in a compost pile knows they are still recognizable months later. Coarsely crushed shells will not break down fast enough to release usable calcium during the one growing season your tomato actually needs it. They would have to be ground into a near powder to do much of anything. The real fix is consistent moisture. Keep the soil evenly damp, never letting it fully dry out and then flooding it. A layer of mulch around the base helps hold moisture steady, and drip irrigation or a soaker hose works wonders because it delivers water at a slow, even pace. If you genuinely suspect a soil deficiency, the smart move is a cheap soil test rather than a guess. Save your eggshells for the compost pile, where they will do some quiet good over time, but do not expect them to rescue this year's tomatoes. Myth number 5, if a plant looks sick, feed it. This one comes straight from the heart, and that's what makes it so dangerous. A plant is struggling. Leaves are yellowing, growth is stalling, it looks generally miserable. Your instinct is to help, and what helps plants grow? Fertilizer. So you give the patient a big dose of plant food to nurse it back to health. Please don't. Fertilizer is not medicine, it is food. And feeding a sick plant is a little like force-feeding a giant meal to someone who is nauseous. You are not solving the problem, you are piling stress on top of stress. Here's the science. Fertilizers are essentially salts. When you apply a fertilizer to a plant whose roots are already damaged, drought-stressed, waterlogged, or fighting pests, those salts build up in the soil and pull moisture out of the roots. This phenomenon is literally called fertilizer burn. Burned, damaged roots become even worse at absorbing water and nutrients, which drives the plant deeper into the spiral you were trying to pull it out of. Extension horticulturists are blunt about this. Never fertilize a plant that is stressed by heat, drought, or disease. There is an extra trap too. Fertilizer, especially the high nitrogen kind, pushes out a flush of fresh, tender new growth. Tender new growth is exactly what aphids and spider mites love to feast on. So you can accidentally turn your struggling plant into an all-you-can-eat buffet for pests. The right move is to play detective before you play chef. When a plant looks unwell, ask why. Is it getting too much or too little water? Is it getting enough light? Are there bugs hiding under the leaves? Are the roots crammed and root bound in too small a pot? Fix the actual cause first. Then, once the plant has recovered and is pushing out healthy new growth on its own, you can feed it during the active growing season at the dose on the label and no more. Fertilizer is a reward for a healthy plant, not a rescue for a dying one. Myth number 6, you should till your soil every spring. Picture the classic image of springtime gardening, a rototiller chewing through the earth, leaving behind a bed of fluffy, dark, freshly turned soil ready for planting. It feels productive. It looks like a fresh start. And it has been standard practice in American backyards since the rototiller showed up in the 1940s. But turning over your soil every season is one of the most counterproductive things you can do. And it might be the very reason your beds feel harder and weedier every year. Healthy soil is not just dirt. It is a living structure, full of channels and air pockets, and a whole hidden web of earthworms, beneficial bacteria, and fungi that team up with plant roots to deliver nutrients. When you fire up the tiller, you shred all of that. You pulverize the soil structure, destroy those fungal networks, and expose the tiny organisms in the top few inches to air and sun that kill them off. And the irony is brutal. People often till to fix compacted soil, but tilling causes compacted soil over time. Once that natural structure is destroyed, the soil collapses into a dense layer. So you feel like you have to till again next year, locking yourself into an endless cycle. Worse still, every pass of the blade drags up weed seeds that have been buried and dormant for years, hauling them right to the surface where sunlight triggers them to sprout. So tilling to clean up your beds actually plants you a brand new crop of weeds. The alternative is called no-dig or no-till gardening. And it is exactly what it sounds like. You stop disturbing the soil. Instead of digging things in, you build the soil up from the top, the way nature does on a forest floor. Lay down a few inches of compost or mulch on the surface each year and let the worms and microbes pull it down and do the mixing for you. Over time, you get loose, rich, beautifully workable soil with fewer weeds, better moisture retention, and far less back-breaking labor. One fair exception: breaking ground on a brand new bed in rock-hard, compacted ground may call for loosening it once to get started. After that, put the tiller away. Myth number 7, cram in more plants for a bigger harvest. You've got a small garden and big dreams, so the logic seems airtight. More plants means more food. Why leave all that empty space between seedlings when you could squeeze in a few extra and double your tomato count? Those spacing recommendations on the seed packet feel wildly generous. Surely they are just being cautious. They are not. That spacing is one of the most important numbers on the packet, and ignoring it is a classic way to sabotage your own harvest. When you crowd plants together, they do not share nicely. They compete. They fight each other for the same sunlight, the same water, and the same nutrients in the soil. The result is a jungle of weak, leggy, undersized plants, every one of them underperforming. 10 crammed-in tomato plants will reliably give you a smaller, sadder harvest than 5 properly spaced ones that each have room to thrive. Crowding causes a sneakier problem too. When plants are jammed shoulder to shoulder, air cannot move between them. The leaves stay damp longer after rain or morning dew, and stagnant, humid air trapped in a dense canopy is the perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases like powdery mildew, blight, and mold. One infected plant in a crowded bed can spread disease to its neighbors fast because their leaves are practically touching. Good spacing isn't wasted space. It's the AIR flow that keeps your whole garden healthy. So, trust the seed packet. Give each plant the room it is asking for. It feels strange at the start of the season, staring at all that bare soil between tiny seedlings, but those plants are going to fill in and reward your patience. If you are tight on space, the answer is not to cram, it's to garden up. Use trellises, stakes, and cages to grow vertically, and you will fit more food into a small footprint without choking your plants. In the garden, less really can be more. So, which one were you doing? If you saw yourself in 1 or 2, or let's be honest, all 7, don't sweat it. Every gardener has fallen for these, and now you're ahead of the game. So here's my challenge. Pick the myth you're guilty of, ditch it this season, and tell me in the comments how it changed your harvest. I want to hear it. And if this saved your tomatoes, hit subscribe. We bust garden myths every week, and your future plants are counting on you.